On the map of the world, there are places that time has chosen to forget. Where today only the scorching sun and drifting sands reign supreme, there once echoed the footsteps of a thriving civilization. Imagine a desert so vast that it seems devoid of life, yet hidden deep within its bowels lies an entire nation. This is not a fairy tale. It is the reality of what we call the ghost cities of the sand. These are cities that did not vanish overnight. Instead, grain by grain, the desert slowly embraced them, inch by inch, until the earth completely consumed them. When the first clues of these cities were discovered, scientists were left in awe. These were not mere mud huts. They were architectural masterpieces that would leave even today's most advanced engineers breathless. These ruins, buried under layers of time, scream the truth, that before us there lived a people who knew the secret of turning stone into art. The most striking feature of these cities was their architecture. Thousands of years ago, when there were no cranes, no computers, and no modern machinery, how did these people raise such monumental palaces in the heart of a wasteland? The stones used in these walls were transported from hundreds of miles away. The floors of these palaces were crafted from black marble and epoxy-like lustrous materials that remain polished despite the abrasive friction of the sand over centuries. Every building was oriented with surgical precision to ensure the interiors remained cool, defying the hellish heat of the desert. These architects understood the ruthlessness of the desert. They laid foundations that did not fear the shifting earth. These cities were not just a collection of brick and stone. They were a triumph of human will against the forces of nature. But a haunting question remains. What desperate need drove these people to make this scorched? In a land where a single drop of water is worth more than a bag of gold, how did a city of thousands survive? This was the desert's greatest paradox. While the surface was a furnace of death, beneath the feet of these citizens lay a hidden world of liquid life. These were the engineers of the deep. They didn't just find water, they mastered it. They constructed vast underground aqueducts, known in ancient tongues as Qanats, stretching for miles through the bedrock. These tunnels were angled with such precision, calculated to a fraction of a degree, that gravity alone carried the water from distant mountain aquifers to the heart of the city. Imagine the sound of splashing water echoing through a marble hall while the sun outside melted the very air. This wasn't just survival, it was a display of absolute dominance over the environment. They built indoor cooling systems that used wind towers to catch the desert breeze, passing it over underground water pools to create natural air conditioning. Thousands of years before the first electric fan, these people lived in luxury, shielded by a fortress of stone and mist. Why here? Why build a paradise in the middle of nowhere? The answer lies in the dust. This ghost city was a vital heartbeat in the Golden Silk Road. It was a sanctuary for the bravest traders on earth. Gold from the south, silk from the east, and spices from the unknown horizons all flowed through these gates. The city grew fat on taxes and trade. The wealth was so immense that they didn't just build for utility, they built for vanity. We find remnants of epoxy-like resins used to seal decorative river floors that mimicked the flow of water in rooms where real water was too precious to waste. But wealth of this magnitude attracts more than just traders. It attracts envy. It attracts greed. And most dangerously, it attracts the eyes of rival empires. As the vaults grew heavier with gold, the city's walls grew higher. They thought their gold could buy them eternity. They were wrong. The very trade routes that
of nowhere. Nature is a patient creditor. You can borrow its resources for centuries, but eventually it comes to collect. The climate began to shift. The rains that fed the distant mountains ceased. The underground veins, once bursting with water, began to run dry. Panic didn't happen in a day. It was a slow, agonizing realization. First, the fountains stopped. Then, the gardens withered. The luxury that once defined them now mocked them. The black marble halls grew hot. The cooling winds turned into scorching gales. The desert was reclaiming its territory, and it was doing so with a vengeance. Wealth is a double-edged sword. As the city's water dried up, its gold became its greatest curse. Surrounding empires, desperate and starving from the same drought, turned their eyes toward the marble jewel of the desert. They didn't want the culture. They wanted the vaults. The siege lasted for months. The city, designed for luxury, was forced to become a fortress. The grand Art Deco entrances were walled up with rough stone. The beautiful epoxy floors were stained with the soot of war. But the enemy wasn't just the army outside the gates. It was the thirst within. The once mighty aqueducts were now nothing but echoes and dust. In the end, the gates weren't broken by force. They were opened by the desperate. History records a mystery here that defies logic. When the invaders finally breached the inner sanctum, they found nothing. The vaults were empty. The streets were silent. Thousands of people had vanished, as if they had walked into the air itself. Did they flee through secret tunnels yet to be discovered? Or did the desert itself open up and swallow them whole to protect them from the cruelty of man? That final night, a sandstorm of unprecedented scale, a Satan's gale, descended upon the city. It lasted for 7 days. When the winds finally died down, there was no city left to loot. There was only a horizon of golden dunes, flat and indifferent. The empire had been erased from the face of the earth. For 2,000 years, this city was a myth, a campfire story told by Bedouins. That was until the eyes of the 21st century looked down from space. Using synthetic aperture radar, we can now see through the sand as if it were glass. What we found was staggering. The city is perfectly preserved. The dry, salt-heavy sand acted as a natural tomb, preventing decay. Underneath the feet of unsuspecting travelers lie libraries of scrolls, halls of black marble, and the skeletal remains of a dream. We are now standing on the threshold of the greatest archaeological find in human history. This ghost city is a mirror. It shows us that no matter how high we build, no matter how much gold we hoard, we are guests of the earth, not its masters. We build our arks and our empires, thinking they are eternal, but the sand always waits. As we look at these ruins, we don't just see the past, we see a warning for the future. Our cities, too, rely on invisible veins of water and power. Our wealth, too, is a target for envy. The silence of the sands is not just a lack of sound, it is a message. Listen closely. It tells us that the only thing that truly lasts is not the stone we carve, but the legacy of how we treated the world while we were here. The city is gone. The people are dust. But the desert remains. And somewhere, deep beneath the dunes, the black marble floors still catch the ghost of a light that hasn't shone for 2 millennia.